The kitchen was usually a place of comfort, a sanctuary with a warm atmosphere, the aroma of shimmering herbs and spices, and the rhythmic clinking of pots and pans. Tonight, however, it was filled with an entirely different kind of tension. The presence of the man who ruled over Seoul's underworld added a dangerous edge to what should have been a mundane cooking routine. Your husband, Park Jimin, powerful, intimidating, and unrelentingly handsome, stood by the door, leaning against the frame with that dark, contemplative look that you had come to know too well. His dark eyes locked on you. Even in the dim light, he looked every bit the powerful, ruthless man who ruled over the dark realm, the mafia king. But here, in the confines of your home, he was simply your husband, the man who loved you in a way that was raw and unrelenting, whose mere presence could send shivers of both fear and desire racing down your spine, the man who, even now, made your pulse race with just a look. Don't you have meetings to attend or enemies to break? You teased lightly, chopping garlic with quick, practiced strokes. The banter was familiar and comfortable, a veil you both used to cover up just how deeply you both felt. You knew why he was here though. He always lingered in the kitchen when you cooked, watching you with an intensity that made even the mundane act of preparing dinner feel like something sacred. Even though he would never admit to it, something about seeing you do something as ordinary as making dinner seemed to ground him, pulling him away from the darkness of his world. Jimin's lips curved into a faint, almost reluctant smile, the kind that rarely graced his face outside those walls. Those meetings can wait, he murmured, his voice a deep, smooth rumble that curled around your senses like a seductive chaos. He pushed off the door frame, his large frame moving with a predatory grace as he strode towards you. Besides, my wife is making something special tonight, and I don't intend to miss it. You rolled your eyes, fighting the smile that threatened to break free. It's just pasta, Japan. Pasta made by you, Amor. That makes it special. He replied smoothly, his eyes darkening with an emotion that made your heart flutter. Your cheeks warmed under his gaze, and you turned back to the chopping board, pretending to focus on dicing the herbs. But you could feel him watching you, his presence like a physical touch that made your skin tingle. He moved closer, his breath coasting over your neck, and then suddenly his hands were on your waist, pulling you gently back against his hard chest. You could feel his heart beating rhythmically against your back. Careful, you warned softly, your voice a bit breathless due to his proximity. The warmth his palms radiated against your waist sent chills down your spine. I am holding a knife, remember? You warned and raised the knife, looking at him over your shoulder. He ignored the warning, his lips curving in that maddening self-assured way that only he could pull off. Leaning in, he nuzzled the sensitive spot just below your ear, sending a jolt of electricity skittering down your spine. A knife, he murmured, his voice low and husky, that I trust in no other hands but yours. Your heart fluttered at the underlying sentiment. For a man who wielded violence as a tool, who trusted almost no one, his words carried more weight than any romantic poem. His faith in you meant more than he could ever say. You placed the knife down, turning in his arms. Jimin's dark eyes, so dangerous, so intense, softened as he looked at you. His thumb traced your jawline before he leaned in, capturing your lips in a slow, claiming kiss. Jimin, you sighed when you broke apart, your hands resting against his chest. He smelled of expensive cologne and faint cigar smoke, a scent that had become achingly familiar to you. Let me finish cooking, you whispered almost inaudibly. He looked down at you, his expression raw, unguarded. His thumb traced your jawline in a slow, reverent gaze. I'll help, he murmured, his lips twitching into a slow smirk. You raised an eyebrow, disbelief clear in your expression. Jimin rarely did domestic activities. His world was filled with power plays, covert deals, and bullets. Cooking wasn't exactly part of his skill set, but he didn't wait for permission. Reaching over, he grabbed a tomato, inspecting it as though it was something fragile. I'm serious, he said, glancing at you. You blinked up at him. Teach me. There were times, like now, when his intensity took you by surprise. Times when the man, the ruthless king of Seoul, looked at you not just with desire but with something more vulnerable, more human. Lean in closer, your foreheads almost touching. I want to know every part of your world, every part of you. He whispered, his voice barely a breath. Even if it's something as simple as learning to make pasta. Your throat tightened. He would never say it outright, but you knew what he meant. Cooking was just a small, mundane thing, but it representing something normal, something safe. He didn't have safety in his life, and neither did you, not with the constant threat of rival families and the dangerous empire he ruled. But moments like this, they were yours, untouchable. For just a few minutes, you weren't the mafia king and his wife. You were just a man and woman making dinner together. You swallowed the sudden lump in your throat. For him, a man who lived in a world of chaos and bloodshed, there was no normal, no simple praises, no quiet moments of peace. But here, in your kitchen, making something as ordinary as pasta, he was just a man, your man. All right, you agreed softly, smiling up at him. But don't blame me if you end up ruining my sauce. His dark eyes glittered with humor, and he gave a mock glare, his lips twisting in a rare, genuine smile. I'll try not to. But if I do, you can punish me however you see fit, Amor. I'm entirely at your mercy. He playfully winked at you, eliciting a laugh from you, the sound light and free. Be careful what you wish for, my king. I can be very creative. You murmured, reciprocating the same playfulness. His smile widened, a wicked glint lightening his eyes. I have no doubt, he murmured, leaning in to brush his lips over yours in a feather-light kiss that left you aching for more. For the next hour, you both moved around the kitchen together. Jimin awkwardly chopped vegetables under your guidance, his concentration fierce and amusingly out of place. He cursed more than once when the garlic wouldn't mince properly or when the tomatoes slipped from his grasp, but he didn't give up. His stubbornness, usually reserved for dealing with his enemies, was now channeled into learning how to cook. I think you missed your calling me Ogaro, you teased as he struggled to peel an onion. Perhaps you should have been a chef instead of a mob boss. He shot you a look, his expression darkening playfully. A chef, Amor? Do you know what I'd do to someone who dared question my culinary skills? Please do enlighten me, you replied dryly, crossing your arms across your chest, darting the same playful look at him. He leaned in close, his lips brushing your ear as he whispered, I tie them to a chair and make them eat every single dish I cooked, no matter how terrible, and trust me, they would be begging for mercy long before the appetizer was over. You gasped, squinting your eyes at him. However, you couldn't hold back your laugh, noticing his serious expressions. You are terrible. Only for you, he murmured, his voice softening. He reached out, tucking a stray strand of hair behind your ear. The gesture was so tender, so unlike the powerful, dangerous man he was, that it made your heart squeeze painfully. Finally, the sauce was simmering on the stove, and the kitchen was filled with the rich scent of tomatoes, garlic, and fresh basil. You leaned back against the counter, watching him stir it carefully. He looked so out of place in your apron, a sight that would shock anyone who knew the ruthless king of Seoul's criminal empire. But he was here, with you. I think you might have a hidden talent. You teased lightly, stepping closer to peek over his shoulder. Who knew the infamous Park Jimin could be so domesticated? He showed you a look, but there was no anger in it, just that familiar spark that always made your heart race. Don't get used to it. I only take orders from you. You laughed softly, wrapping your arms around his waist from behind, pressing your cheek against the broad plane of his back. He still, then relaxed in your embrace, his free hand coming to rest over yours. I would never dream of ordering you around, Amor, but thank you. His muscles tensed beneath your touch, then relaxed. For what? For trying, for being here, for loving you, he finished quietly, his voice a low, gruff murmur. You pressed your face more into his back, your heart stuttering in your chest. Yes, for loving me, you whispered, your throat tightened with the rush of emotions. He turned, pulling you gently into his arms. His gaze burned into yours, fierce and unyielding. I don't just love you, Amor. I'm consumed by you. There's no part of me that doesn't belong to you. Jimmy's gaze softened, and he leaned down, pressing his lips to your forehead. For you, I'd do more than try. I'd burn the city to the ground if it meant seeing you smile. Your breath caught at the fierce sincerity in his voice. You don't have to burn anything, just stay with me, you whispered, cupping his cheek. His eyes darkened with different emotions, and he nodded slowly. Always, Amor, he whispered, pressing his forehead against yours. Tonight, there's no mafia, no enemies, no war, just you and me, our world, and I intend to savor every second of it. His voice carried a firm resolve as he slowly embraced you between his arms. At that moment, it didn't matter that you lived in a wall of crime and chaos, that he was a mafia king and you were his queen. All that mattered was the two of you, standing in a warm kitchen, sharing a quiet, perfect moment that no one could take away. Dinner, when you both finally sat down to eat, was imperfect. The pasta was slightly overcooked and the sauce was a bit too salty. But as you shared that simple meal, talking and laughing together, it was more delicious than any gourmet feast, because for once you had made it together. And in your dangerous, unpredictable lives, these small moments of domesticity, of normalcy, were more precious than any crown or kingdom. They were a reminder that beneath the titles and power, you both were just a man and woman, desperately, madly in love. Will you cook with me again? You asked softly as you finished your dinner, reaching across the table to take his hands. Jimin's gaze softened, his thumb brushing over your knuckle. Every time, Amor, every time. And you believed him, because when a man like Jimin made a promise, not even the fires of hell could keep him from keeping it.